Utter worldie. In this episode called Goals and Strikers, I discussed with Darran Hay the art of finishing. During his career, he averaged 0.38 goals per game in the Conference National League between the years 1995 to 2000, representing both Woking and Stevenage football clubs. We discuss how visualisation and cognitive rehearsal can optimise performance and help manage pressure. Darran reflects on how he would mentally prepare for games, imagining different scenarios that may result in goal-scoring opportunities and how he may score. We also discuss how repetition and scenario-based practices can improve performance, positive thinking for positive outcomes, learning from failure, remaining calm and sticking with the game plan. Welcome, Darran Hay, one of the most prolific and popular strikers that I've played with. How you doing?
Howdy, buddy. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I've been looking over your record. It's not bad, I have to tell you. You average about 0.38 goals a game. So during your time at Woking, 200 appearances, 81 goals. I worked that out about 0.4.
Yeah.
And then Stevenage, 40 appearances and 21 goals, about 0.5.
Not bad.
That's not bad at all, is it? And so I'm just going to ask you a little bit about that, some tips perhaps. And I'll start with Pep Guardiola. He said the most difficult thing in football is to score a goal. Yeah. So perhaps you'll tell us how.
Difficult. I mean, I think you find statistically the highest paid players are always going to be strikers, the ones that put the ball in the back of the net, because they get the biggest criticisms, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And alongside that, the most pressure. I think scoring goals is something that some people can find a little bit easier than others. But I suppose it's something that you work on, and you get a natural feeling. You hear about it in football. He didn't even look at the goal because he knows where it is, and I think that's something. It comes as instinct to players that have played the game or looking to play the game. They feel. They don't have to look at the goal. They know where the keeper may be, but they know where the corners of the goals are, and they can aim for those areas. And by and large, quality strikers and people that finish naturally hit them areas more times out of 10, and that's what gives them their results. I look at Harry Kane's, some of the stuff that he does and some of the goals that he scores. He hasn't even looked at the goal. He just knows where the goal is, and that's what sets him apart from other players and other strikers.
Yeah, that's a really good example. And when we spoke just before this interview, you mentioned beforehand. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some scenarios with you. Yeah. And you mentioned like imagining or thinking about what was going to happen in the game the next day, almost like we call it a psychological intervention. So they would call that visualization, imagery, like a mental rehearsal or even like a cognitive rehearsal, where you're recreating an experience in your mind using previous experiences. And that's been shown to improve and optimize performance. It was interesting that you brought that up and you mentioned it because they've also, you can learn that, but you can also, that's something you developed and taught yourself, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's funny because when I was at Stevenage, I never really had that type of training at any other clubs, and one of them was a professional club at Cambridge. It wasn't spoken about, but at Stevenage, the manager at the time was Paul Fairclough, and I never forget it. He introduced us to a psychological analysis and all of this, and we was all sitting in the meeting room. All the players were sitting there, and he was talking about it, and was all like looking at each other, thinking, "What the hell is he talking about? God dear, is he sure?" And actually, what he's talking about was how to get in the zone. How do you best perform? How do you get your body in a perfect state to perform? And actually, what he was doing. He was thinking well ahead of what we were, and because he was working with the Arsenal at the time, he was doing some scouting with the Arsenal, doing some stuff for Mr. Wenger. He was doing some stuff with him. He learned from him, so he was giving us some information about how to get in the zone. And as I said, we all sat there in a meeting laughing and thinking, what the bloody hell is he talking about? But actually, it stuck. And I think one or two of us started to really sort of like buy into a new way of getting yourself in the zone. And I think there's a reason why my stats at Stevenage were quite good, because before every single match, I would always do a little bit of a routine where Richard, I'd start at the halfway line, and you know what it's like, mate. You've been in the game, pro game, and the non-league game. But the boys will the boys would have their I suppose their programs in their hands. They'll be walking around, milling around the centre circle, looking at the pitch, checking out what studs they're going to wear. But where my routine was always a little bit different, although I'd go out with the boys and have a couple of minutes with them, I would start off in the centre circle, Rich, and I would walk to both goals. I'd start to the left, so I'd walk up to the left goal, and as I'd walk to that goal, people would maybe even try to talk to me. I would ignore them, and it was a case of what would I do now in this position. I would get to sort of like 30 yards from goal, and I'd be thinking, well, if the keeper comes out off his goal, I'm going to lob him. This is exactly what I'm going to do. So I'd imagine, and like you just said, the cognitive stuff. Sometimes I would kick through. People might think, what the hell is he doing? But I'd be in a zone where I'd be thinking about how I'm going to finish in this scenario. So I'd walk as I got closer to the goal. Obviously, the keeper couldn't come out too far, so I got closer to the goal. He'd shut the angle down, maybe. Would I slide it past him? Would I look to lift it over him? Would I look to go round him? So these were decisions that I'd make before the game had even kicked off. Remember, these guys are still in the centre circle. Yeah, I'd be doing this, and I'd walk straight into the goal, and I'd never forget this. I'd always pull the net. I'd go as far as, literally a ball coming across the face of the goal. Now I'm only 6 yards out. I'll use my left foot just to guide it into the corner, and I'd literally be a foot 2 yards out now. This is keeper spilt it. I've just tapped it in, and then I'd walk into the goal and pull the net. I'll never forget that. I'd always pull the net.
I can remember you doing that. I can remember you kicking through. Yeah, I can remember you going through that. And you're right. I was thinking, what's this guy doing here? But I saw you do it. I didn't ask you the first few times, but then I watched you do it a few times. I go, oh, okay, now that makes sense to me, because that was part of your routine. I had mine, and that was yours, wasn't it? We kind of left each other to it, if I remember rightly.
100.
And, just touching on that, Daisy. They're the small margins, aren't they, that make the differences.
Well, I think
the routine.
That's
and
right.
The preparation.
I think what it taught me, it was in pretty much every scenario. Then I had a go-to, whether you execute it right at the time, whether you've got the circumstances are slightly different, fine. But every scenario pretty much that you can think of, in confidence, you had a natural fail-safe, and it wouldn't stop there, Richard. What I'd do there, if you remember, it would be from one end, then I'd have to walk the length of the pitch. I'd go past the same boys that were still milling around in the circle, and I'd walk straight into the other goal. So now I'm 40 yards out on the halfway line. Could I lob him? Could I slide someone in? What would they do? What would their run be? What would my run be after I've slid them in? And as I walk in slowly...
Let's do that then. Let's do that,
Go for it. Go for it.
Go for it. So let's go from the outside of the box. Let's say you're facing the goal outside of the box. What would you be thinking? Would you be thinking, there's over the years with coaches, they'd be thinking, right, can I hit side netting? Where's the keeper? What would you be thinking outside of the box?
Outside the box, 20, 30 yards out, I'd be thinking, do I curl this? Is he off his line? Can I lift it over him? One of my favourite goals I've ever scored was a lob of a keeper, which was... it was a keeper that come off his line, only sort of like not even the penalty spot, but he was off his line enough. And if you could fake that you're going to smash it and lift it, then it's caught him out. And that was one of the ones I've used, and that was one that I practiced in my mind, sort of thing, well before the game. So as it got closer, you got to the edge of the box. Do you need someone else to bounce off? That's the other thing. Can you slide someone else in? Could you get a ball, like a little 1-2 type of thing going? And at the time, as you remember, we had Yorkie and Coley, so I might have even turned my back on it. Would I face the goal? Would I have my back to the goal? So there's all these little scenarios that would play in my mind that would get me an opportunity to shoot a goal. But you're right. Would I aim for the corner? Would I just go power? Typically, what I ended up doing was trying to find a corner, whether it's going to be a side foot in place or whether it's going to be a power across. Either way. And the other thing as well, Richard, it wasn't just direct straight at goal. Sometimes I'd move to an angle. So the keeper's got to come out. In my mind, the keeper would be narrowing that angle at a distance. So I'd try and chip him to the far corner, that type of stuff. But each time, each time, mate, it would always be, can you finish? Can you finish? How would you finish in this position? So it was always clear in my mind, if I ever got myself in a position in the game, I know exactly what I want to do. Whether I can execute it or not, that's the other thing. But stats were, telling you that, they invariably they would go well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good response there, because it's a bit of an open question. A lot of things can happen. Football's a dynamic sport, isn't it? So you're taking in a whole multitude of information and trying to consider different variables all in a very short space of time, aren't you? But
You are.
I suppose essentially from a striker's point of view is, can you get your shot off, and is it the right time to do it?
Yeah. The interesting on that one would be, I would play people, but it'd always be a return. And that's the other thing, because it's, strikers, you want to score, but you can also set up. And nowadays, I think it's more, a lot of strikers are like, you scored X amount of goals, but you've also got X amount of assists. It wasn't about assists for me. It was more about, can I play someone who can play me back in? So in my mind, it was always me getting that shot away, or getting a header off, or getting a tap in, or something like that. If they did get a shot away, which is very, very rare, it'd be, can you slide me back? And then I'll get my shot away. So that would more likely be the variable that I'd play in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be a little bit ruthless in terms of that, don't you? Being a striker, you're thinking of yourself, how you're going to be the finisher, aren't you? In the best scenarios,
you are.
So let's move forward a bit then. So moving into the box, let's go crosses. So crosses, you're moving into the box. What are you thinking then?
It depends, and the crosses it's difficult, because this is the variables that come into it. So if a cross was coming from, if a winger got to the byline and he was sort of like near enough the corner flag, it would be, can I get across anyone? Because I don't fancy them getting anything to the far stick. So it was always, can I get someone across? Nowadays in 2023, we're looking at cutting back a lot, but in my day it was more, can you get across someone? So that was always my first thing, whether it was a side foot, whether it was a header, and I was quite strong in the air. That was one of my favourites. So can I time it so that I can get across someone and nip in front of them at the right time, so that I can get a glance, I can get a header in. But if they were more central towards the, just outside the 18-yard box, it would be draw someone in and then pull off. So that was that was something that I found as one of my traits, and I found that I was quite good at, drawing looking like you're going to go across someone and let them go in, thinking that they're going to cover you, and just pull off 2 or 3 steps and get a good leap on and get a free header in. So, I'm 6 foot. I know some defenders that I was dealing with were 6'3", 6'4", so they could pretty much they could do me. So I've got to find my way. That I've got to get the better of them. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse thing. And don't get me wrong, people always said to me, how did you know? Well, it's a gamble, isn't it? You can only gamble. Some wingers, I played with wingers that even though they're at the corner flaggish sort of area, they can still dig a ball in and still hit the far stick. But you can only gamble, and the gamble is, I don't think they'll do this. I'm going to go there. And, I really fancy them to pull this one over the back, so I'm going to stop and bring back. So it's a gamble, mate. It really is. And it's just taking that educated guess on where someone would be. But if you've prepared yourself for it, it's something that stands you in good stead, yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't mention it, but that's similar to the goal you scored at Wembley, wasn't it? In 1997, I think it was, where you made the first run. The coaches usually say, don't they, first run for the player, second for the ball. You might do that more than once, but that's what I think you did with that goal at Wembley, didn't you? You pulled off him, and then you gained some leverage, and then you were able to head that in, weren't you?
Yeah, the defender was again, I think he was 6'6", 6'7". As I said, he'd given me an India foot. He's a big old boy, and the thing that we had there, and to be fair, it was Clive Walker that I was playing with at the time, and he had a thing with me, and always said, Daisy, just get to the far stick. That was your thing. Just get to the far stick. And there was times in the game that I gambled on the near, and he'd hang it up at the back, and I was like, oh my god! And I told you, get to the back stick. Anyway, this particular time that you're talking about, that was one. I just said, listen, I'm just gonna. One for the runner, one for the defender, and I'm going to pull off and see if I can get myself a free header at the back. And his delivery it took out the defender, it took out the goalkeeper, and it gave me an opportunity, a free header. And the rest is history. But it really is, it is a part of my game which like you just said, I was strong at. Once I got the header, I'd normally hit the target, and it was that close. It just needed good power and good connection, and it was in. So yeah, you're right. It's spot on.
And then, okay, so with heading, let's move on to like crosses. So side foot volleys, half volleys, and you used to practice your left foot, didn't you? Even in your latter years, you would always practice on both feet, wouldn't you? You're finishing on both feet. And I would say, from a defender's point of view, the stronger you were on both feet made my job harder. But also as well, Hazy, I just want to touch on this. With the finishing, I always wanted the forward to have a touch.
Yeah.
But I want you, because then I got a chance to close you down and block it or affect it. But it's the first time finishes, when possible, is it when you take me out of the game a little bit, don't you?
Yeah.
As a defender.
Yeah. I mean, and what it does, an early finish or quick finish is it's the keeper's not always set for it. Like you just said, if you take a touch, they can get themselves ready for they know when the next contact's going to be. But if you a quick snapshot, left or right, it's difficult to predict where it's going to go. For me, Richard, it was my right foot was always one I'd take. If I had to trust a foot, it'd be my right foot. But if I wanted power, raw power, and if I made the good connection, it'd be left foot. I got confident with left foot, and I scored some of my favourite goals with left footed, even though you think, I am right footed predominantly, but my left foot was trusted in certain areas, and if I hit it, it stayed hit, if you like. Right foot would be more cultured, still power, but definitely more accuracy with my right foot. But if I hit the left foot, oh yeah, it'd stay hit. And as I got older, I was more trusting in the left foot than I was when I was probably 16, 17, 18 in an early career, early local football sort of thing. Composure, accuracy, and repetitive training was a key for me.
Okay, it's interesting you mentioned repetitive training, because it's the repetitions, isn't it, that help you with that. But I think coaching has moved on a little bit since then, so it's almost like you develop almost having the tools in your box, different tools to use, like they call it a blended toolkit, if you like, for you to improve your performance. So coaches would look at a blended toolkit, let's say, when they're coaching, to look at the player's age or the aim for the practice all the time. So we perhaps would say, like, a toolkit, different bits in your armoury. But they would say with traditional repetition-based approaches, that's really good. But also what they found in the research, AZ, is that by continuous variations, having a number of variables to encourage self exploration, if you like, different scenarios, that can also help increase creativity. Or say with yourself, it would be like creating chances. So through different scenarios. So for you, practicing those closed block practices, but also practicing those in real time scenarios as well. Did you ever find that?
I did. I think and this is what I was talking about when you are catching someone out. You mentioned about taking that touch. Well, actually, he's right-footed. He ain't gonna shoot this on his left foot. But actually, and this is where I encourage my girls, I'm coaching at the moment, to trust their weaker foot, because you're not always going to get an opportunity to shoot on your stronger foot. So if you don't know what's going to happen with the ball at certain times with your weaker foot, especially these young guys, well, how can a keeper? So I'm encouraging people that are listening to this to encourage their young people or their people that they're coaching is to try and trust that weaker foot. I found that you certainly get confidence once you've made a few good connections and obviously scored the goals or made some great passes or contributions. And I actually think that it's about building on the confidence. Yes, repetitive stuff, in-game learning is, I suppose, how we teach it. In-game learning and reflect upon what you've done well and how you felt when something went well for you. So a young girl scores with a weaker foot, then how did you feel at that moment? Well, I didn't feel it on my foot. It just felt natural. Well, this is where you encourage someone to try it again in training, and if a scenario arises in a game, then don't be afraid to try it. And I think as coaches, as we I do a little bit now, we also encourage them to fail. If it fails, then don't worry, it's part of the game. You're not always going to score. It's not always going to be a success. Don't beat yourself up about it. but learn from it. That type of thing is the approaches that I've learned to give to people that I'm talking to about a game.
Yeah. No, you're always very positive in your outlook. Definitely, I absolutely remember that.
Yeah.
Would you say, just moving on or digressing slightly, would you say that your preparation for a game, that imagery that we mentioned,
Yes.
would you say that helped you manage the pressure? Because that they've found that doing that can help you manage the pressures that are on athletes, that are on professional football players, that can help them perform better. Would you say that helped you manage some of the pressure?
I think that's why I done it, Rich. I think that's why I done it, mate. I mean, there's you see it at the highest level. I look at who was it the other day at Arsenal? There was scored the other day. He scored a hat trick, Nketiah, and they said, well, he's a type of striker that needs to react, and every goal that he scored last week was a goal which was a natural finisher's goal. What he hasn't got is that 3 or 4 seconds. He's running into the goalkeeper and got the time, and everything goes into his mind, and he changes his mind and makes a wrong decision. Martinelli is another example. The other day in the Champions League game, where he made a ricket of one of the decisions that he made, and the keeper saved it, hit it at the keeper. The second time he got that, he had his mind made up, and he took it round the keeper and just slid it into the open goal, and it's a fantastic finish. But this guy had 4, 5, 6 seconds running into the goalkeeper. Loads of variables, loads of things going on in his mind. What do I do? But if you've made up your mind and you've got something positive in your mind, you can normally pull it off. And again, that's something I encourage. And it's something that I used to do quite a lot. I had it in my mind what I was going to do. Yes, the keeper might do something totally different, totally wrong. But 9 times out of 10, the keeper's going to make a decision which you're expecting, and you should be able to execute what was already in your mind. So I agree exactly what you said, mate. The variables might change, but if you've built up that confidence, you've built up that toolkit that you can go away with, and you've got a clear understanding of what you do in certain situations, your confidence is so good. You don't even think about it now. It's natural. This is what I'm going to go and do, and it takes the pressure off you. It takes a lot of the indecision. It takes that indecision away. I know exactly what I want to do here. Can you imagine running into a goalkeeper with someone's chasing you down, a defender's chasing you down? You've got 5 or 6 seconds worth of running before you confront the goalkeeper. There's nothing better than to know. I know exactly what I'm going to do here. Pulling it off ain't easy, but I know exactly what I'm going to do.
So you're prepared. That was my next point, actually. The next point, AZ, was 1 versus 1 with a goalie. So you're ahead of me. You're 1 step ahead of me.
No. I'll tell you, Rich. I'll tell you, mate. I mean, this is the ideal scenario. We've all been down there this road, mate. I mean, listen, you miss some, you score some, and as I said, you don't beat yourself up about it. The way I always used to think about it, Rich. If I missed that, the keeper's that's his job. He's just done his job. I didn't quite do mine, but he's done his. So you got to quickly get over it as best as you can, and then you got to take the next opportunity that comes along. But as you stated, running in one-on-one, what goes through your mind? Well, if you've got something already in your mind, try and stick to that. But I've tried not to change it unless the keeper really forces you to change it. And I suppose as a goalkeeper, that's what they're paid to do. Can I stand up a little bit longer? Can I force him wider? Can I shut him down quicker? All sorts of things might happen, but it's remaining calm and sticking to your game plan for me, mate. And that's 9 times out of 10. That's what I'll try and do. Unless you come right off. Go on.
You've mentioned there remaining calm and not changing your mind. So that leads me on to penalties, right?
Yeah.
So you used to take penalties then. Take me through penalties, AZ.
Mate, I only missed one. I missed one, mate. I missed one at Woking. I missed one, and the one that I missed, that I remember missing, it was a League Cup final against Hereford, and I'll never forget that one because we got to the League Cup final, and for some reason it was at home. I don't know whether we got the advantage or whatever, but it was at home, and we drew 1-1, and it went to a penalty shootout. And as much as I'm the penalty taker, not all the time, I wasn't always a penalty taker, but when I took this penalty, and I felt quite confident in the shootout, I changed my mind. I was going down the centre, I was going to go down the centre, and I changed my mind at the last second or two, and I went for a side foot place, and it was just the perfect height for the keeper. So he didn't have to worry too much. He just had to get the right side and push it away, and it really did pee me off, because if we ended up losing the competition, but there was a little bit of solace in the end of it, because it was my goal that got us to the because we were losing 1-0. It was me that made us an equaliser, got us the equaliser. So we wouldn't have got that far, hadn't scored. So it did make me feel a little bit better. I know it shouldn't have done. I know it's not the sort of thing you should really think about, but actually I did score in the game. So that made me feel a little bit better, Richard. But penalties it's a game of cat and mouse. I know the strikers, we should score. We are we're favourites to score. But again, the goalkeeper's doing his thing. I mean, I look at them nowadays. They pick up their bottles, they walk on the line, they ping the bar, they kick the side, they delay tactics. There's lots of things that they do to get you off your game. But again, I scored a lot of penalties. I say not a lot, but I scored all the rest of the penalties. And I think my go-to was pick your side, good connection. If he saves it, that's what he's paid to do. That was always my thing. Keepers, the keepers they're good. They delay, they stand up long, they do everything they can to put you off. They have a go at the referee. There's arguments and all this sort of stuff. But can you remain calm? Can you stay in your zone? Can you make up your mind, stick to what your plan is, and execute that? And if you connect it well, then you normally will score.
Perfect. Just one more question on that, Hazy.
Okay, mate.
You mentioned about first time finishing. What about setting up? So your first touch, if you've got time, no one around you.
Yeah.
How does your first touch set you up?
I think the first touch is the key. That was always one of my weakest points in youth football. That was definitely my weakest point. And as I got better, as I got older, but even then, it still wasn't the standard that would have got me into the highest of levels of, in the league. So it's something I've really worked hard on my girls with, and really professing how important the first touch is. Because if it's not good enough, it's not going to give you an opportunity to shoot. And it's maybe if you're in a different position, you're a defender, your first touch is poor, you're going to put a striker in. So it's key to the game. I worked on mine a lot at different levels. As a striker, it was chest control, it was thigh control, and not just foot. But I had to work on it because I needed to play a simple role in every team that I was playing in. Systems have changed, players have changed, tactics have changed from when we were playing, Rich. I'm not sure if you're still up to knocking about with the ball, mate. But when I was playing, mate, it's coming through. A lot of the stuff was attacks were leading through the strikers. You was flicking things on, you was holding things up, you was setting play. So I found in the box, you didn't often get a chance to take two touches, but if you did, your first touch had to be perfect for your second touch, and your second touch was a shot. So working on it, working against the wall, working against players, working in tight boxes, keeping the balls, and and a lot of this was under pressure. Whether you was getting pushed in the back at the same time by one of your mates because they're training you to hold the ball up. And it's about getting that repetitive training, used to doing these types of things, used to doing it. It's not something that's alien to me because I'm training with guys that are pushing you, they're leaning on you. You've got back into them and control the ball and lay it off, and maybe sometimes even get a turn on. So it's practice, repetitive stuff. It's learning, feeling that ball, feeling the touch, and receiving it at different angles and heights and pressures. Some are rolled in, some are chipped in, some are driven in. And my thing was, and this is my stat, always in my head, and my girls will know this. Richard, 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Don't care. I don't care how many come into you. 8 of them must stick. So you can not afford, but I'm not going to be happy. But I'm allowing you 2. 8 out of 10 must stick, and that was a physical striker who would put himself about and give as good as he got. 8 out of 10 must stick with me. That was always my numbers, mate.
Yeah, and there's some wisdom in that because you can't be perfect all the time, but that's good. So for various things, so that's kind of an acceptable figure. And then I suppose you're not focusing on the negative. But I think going back to a first touch as well, it makes the rest easier, doesn't it? I always found that if your first touch is where it should be, then the next part, the second part of that hazy, then becomes a little bit easier, doesn't it? If it's where it should be.
That's right, and you appreciate it. I've spent time on the bench, mate. I've spent time on the side where players were, I'm sorry, Daisy, we can't trust you. Midfielders can't join in at the moment. You're not securing the stuff. And I've spent time on the bench and I've sat with managers and said, listen, what do I need to do to get myself back in? And, they've come on and they said, listen, what you're doing is fantastic because you're finishing well, fantastic, but it's the other part of your game that needs to be upped. And, the first touches and the setting and all this. So that's where I went away and worked at a lot of this stuff. And then I realised my role wasn't just scoring; it was a bigger picture and reliability. The reliability of that ball coming in, it was sticking and coming back to one of our teammates. So I learnt that hard, and I had to sit on the bench for weeks watching it, and I was thinking, right, he can't score like me, but his hold up play is better than mine. Right, I'm gonna improve that area of my game because I know when it comes to finishing, I'm better than him. And as you'll know, Richard, we saw lots of strikers coming in. They'll come on as my replacements. We saw a lot of them off, mate, and they could do certain bits of the game better than me. But ultimately, when it comes to finishing, my finishing was better. So I just needed to improve that real key part of my game, which was hold up and which was the first touch, and making sure I brought people in at the right time, at the right pace, so they didn't have to check or run or anything like that. It was they could run straight onto a ball, which I've laid into a position for them. I realised my position and I had to work at it, mate.
Yeah, and you did, didn't
Thanks,
you?
Mate.
It did improve, and the first touch, fantastic.
Thank you, mate. Thank you.
So I'm just going to summarise everything. So we started off and we talked about the importance of imagery on performance and how you prepare for games, going through different scenarios in your mind, and how that can be important for sports performance and to optimise your performance. And then we mentioned then on just like different scenarios of how to finish, what would go through your mind.
Yeah.
Say coming into the box, outside the box, first touch finish, where the goalie is, and taking in all of those variables as to how you would finish.
Yeah. I mean, anything like you said. You just said about variables. I mean, you even to consider it's wet today.
Yeah.
Or it's windy. Honestly, that's how much time you had when you're walking from one end to the other. So you're spot on. Yeah.
Okay. And so talking of those variables, preparing, as you say, they're preparing, walking from one end to the other, getting yourself ready for that game, and how you would work on, say, weaknesses of your game and how you would go about doing that and building on your toolkit, if you like. And taking everything in from the dynamic nature of football and how you'd optimise your performance moving forward. But I mentioned a quote earlier, Hazy, so we're going to finish on a quote. So if you let me know, you can. Ian Holloway said this. You can say that strikers are very much like postmen. They have to get in and out as quick as they can before the dog starts to have a go.
So I tell you, I love that though. I like that. And the analogy is spot on actually, because you are in a position that you got ghosting, you got to not be seen, if you like, at times. I mean, I've ducked down to try and squeeze myself into a position, but ultimately you've got a job to do, and you've got to, you're as good as your last game. You're as good as putting the ball in the back of the net, mate. It's something you have to do, and you've done it enough times, Richard, because I know you've played up top and I know you've played at the back, but you've also spent time up top and you've defended against decent players, mate. And it's just whatever you've got in your toolkit to give you the edge is what you have to use.
It's been brilliant speaking with you, and thank you for your insights. Some brilliant insights there into finishing and what goes through a striker's mind. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Richard. Take care, buddy.
Utter worldie.